As the Giants begin the search to replace Gabe Kapler, I want to take a look at a wide variety of candidates who could ultimately succeed Kapler in San Francisco in the dugout. I've talked a lot on recent episodes of my show about how just changing the manager is simply not enough for this organization to suddenly have success in 2024. There have to be widespread philosophical changes at the ownership and front office levels for the Giants to have an opportunity to make good on their goal and compete for the postseason on an annual basis. Now, with that being said, the organization did take the step of firing Kapler on the final Friday of the regular season. Farhan Zaidi said this week that the Giants are going to begin interviewing internally. Next week, they'll start interviewing external candidates. And so the search is well underway to find the next manager of the San Francisco Giants. What I want to do on the next few episodes here on YouTube of the Kerry Crowley Show is take a look at some of the candidates the Giants could be looking at and run through the pros and cons of what each of them would bring to the job. It's a difficult job because you're going to have to focus on player development at the major league level. We know that Marco Luciano will have the inside track to be a starting shortstop next year, replace Brandon Crawford. We know that Kyle Harrison should have an inside track to being in the rotation next year. And there are a number of other kids, number of other prospects whose development is simply going to have to continue at the major league level. Whether you look at catcher Patrick Bailey, whether you look at the outfield Luis Ramos, whether you look at a utility guy like Tyler Fitzgerald, there are just simply a lot of players that the Giants have who are not established at the major league level, and therefore a manager and the coaching staff that manager ultimately hires is going to play a massive role in the development of all of these players that the Giants are counting on to succeed in the future. And so that's why I want to start this series by talking about a long respected figure in the organization. That's Ron Wotus, someone who has been with the Giants since the 1990s, someone who knows the culture of the organization inside and out, and someone who I think would bring a lot to the job because he looks at baseball through a different view, a different lens than Farhan Zaidi, the Giants' president of baseball operations. And I think, look, at times, Gabe Kapler was simply too in sync with the front office. And we can talk, I'll make a cross-sports reference here. I think Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, I think that they see the NFL, I think that they see roster building in a really symmetrical way, and that has helped the 49ers stay on the same page and succeed in the NFL. Now, in baseball, 162 games, you're going to have differences from time to time. However, I think that at times the Giants and Gabe Kapler, Farhan Zaidi were just simply too aligned, and there weren't enough people pushing back on particular ideas that maybe needed a little more forceful pushback. Talking about openers, talking about platoons, talking about not having enough everyday players and being okay with that because the Giants felt that they could coach up the roster that they did have. I think that Ron Wotus is someone who will bring the leadership qualities that the Giants are seeking, someone who is really comfortable being in a forward-facing role. Look, of course, he was the bench coach for Bruce Bochy for years. He worked on Gabe Kapler's staff, also worked for Dusty Baker in San Francisco. I mean, this is someone who has taken in a wide variety of perspectives throughout his career in Major League Baseball. He's worked in player development, and he's also helped facilitate player development at the major league level. One of Ron Wotus' hallmarks during his tenure as the Giants bench coach was coaching the infield, and he did a sensational job in helping the Giants during what I consider their golden era, 2010, 2012, 2014. They were relying on Pablo Sandoval at third base, Brandon Crawford at shortstop, Joe Panik at second, Brandon Belts at first, and Buster Posey at the catcher position by the time they won that 2014 World Series title. And that is a group Ron Wotus worked intensely with almost all of those players, save for probably Buster, who worked with a catching coach and was doing enough on his own. But all of those infielders benefited from the tutelage of Ron Wotus. He helped them develop at the major league level. And you look at this next group of players in the infield, a Casey Schmidt, a Marco Luciano. If Thairo Estrada is going to continue to get better, you're going to need someone like a Ron Wotus around and helping them. And that's not to say that Kai Correa didn't do a good job with the Giants infield. In fact, I think that was probably one of the better elements of this 2023 team was J.D. Davis getting better at third base, Thairo Estrada being one of the best defensive infielders at second base in Major League Baseball, Lamont Wade Jr. continuing to show progress at first base. But if the Giants are going to make some changes, you want someone with an established track record at the Major League level, and Ron Wotus certainly has that. And another thing that I believe that Ron Wotus would bring to this job if he were to be the next San Francisco Giants manager is he's got the respect of ownership. He's got the respect of this front office because Farhan kept him around. He didn't have to keep everyone around who worked on Bruce Bochy's staff, but Ron Wotus is one of those people who still played an important role in the organization after Bochy left, after the Giants decided to move on. Wotus was kind of a really important part of Gabe Kapler's early coaching staff. And you look at 2020, 2021, you can probably credit some of the pushback the Giants were able to have to Ron Wotus and being comfortable, being the eldest voice in the room, being someone who'd been there and done that, helping facilitate getting these coaches to the major league level, a lot of them unproven, and helping players buy into these coaches' philosophies. I do believe that Ron Wotus probably played a really pivotal and really underrated role in that regard. And I think another thing that Ron Wotus just brings is the intensity. And I think that when you talk to him, you really understand baseball from the perspective of someone who lives it day in and day out. I think that he looks at every element of the game from a really intense perspective and would bring that to the dugout on a daily basis. And I think that one of the most important things the Giants are looking to do is energize this fan base and help people get excited about the next generation of Giants baseball. Ron Wotus connects with players. He's able to connect with fans. If you listen to him talk, he talks about the game in such an eloquent way. You really understand the day-to-day decisions that are made by the club, by the coaching staff, by players in certain situations, and he can help bridge that gap to the next generation of Giants who, as I mentioned, are coming up. It's Marco Luciano, it's Luis Matos, it's Tyler Fitzgerald, it's Patrick Bailey. It's a number of these young kids, and I think that Wotus would be the right mix of someone who's comfortable in development and someone who's stern and can help teach them lessons that they'll need to learn in becoming professionals at the major league level, because Wotus has helped so many other players with that in the past. Now, with that being said, are there any cons to the potential of Wotus being the next Giants manager? I think, in an ideal world, maybe you're looking far outside the organization for someone who truly has different beliefs, for someone who truly is going to not see eye to eye with this front office. And that's not to say that Ron Wotus does, but it's clear that there's a built-in level of comfort with this front office because he's worked for them. He knows what they're trying to implement at the major league level. And so there is certainly a level of comfort and a level of, hey, we're going to get along. We know that this has worked in the past. We know that this can work in the future that exists there. Now, that's not to say that going outside the organization is absolutely the right move, but it is something the Giants will want to and need to consider in this hiring process. So I think there's a lot of benefits that Wotus brings to the job. He would be a first-time manager, and there's always the idea that people are better in their second or third jobs. But I think that Wotus has been in the dugout for so long and worked for so many different established managers during his tenure, whether it be Dusty Baker or Bruce Bochy, and then Gabe Kapler, who brought different ideas, that he would be a blend of all those perspectives and would finally get the opportunity that has been not denied to him so many times. I mean, this is someone who's interviewed for a long list of jobs at the major league level, and if the Giants were the team to finally say, Ron Wotus, you're our guy, I think that would make a lot of people in the organization happy. I think that it would make a lot of fans happy, and I think that it would make the development of these young kids a little better next year, because he's someone who has been there and done that from helping players adjust to the major league level before. I think the Giants would really benefit from having someone with that kind of respect, that the leadership qualities that he has. When he walks into a room, he commands authority. I think that Ron Wotus would do a really good job in helping the Giants approach this next year in 2024, where they're going to be facing pressure, and they're also going to be facing not just the pressure to make the postseason, but the pressure to develop these young kids and make sure that they are better equipped to succeed at the major league level than they were this year. So we will do plenty more of these breakdowns here on the Kerry Crowley Show. There'll be shorter episodes on YouTube, and then later on this week or next week, I'll put it all together. I'll talk about a wide variety of candidates, and we'll mix and mash all together in a long podcast that you can hear in the Kerry Crowley Show Spotify feed or wherever you get your podcasts.